Good morning, everyone. Sounds like it's really loud. Welcome to our first Friday, the first in our new series of First Friday presentations. My name is Teresa Blackwood, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the coordinator of the First Friday Talks, along with my friend Joan Riley. And Joan could not be here today, so I want to thank Susie Harper for helping us with the food coordination. And for everybody who brought food, thank you so much. We always have such good food here. And I also want to thank Candy for stepping forward to help with the cleanup. And for Kayla, who is live streaming for us today, because I thought this was such a good topic that I want people at home to be able to see it too. So our theme for our First Friday Talks is, again, health of body, mind, and spirit. This is the first one of this series, and we go from October to May. You're not going to want to miss the next one, November 1st. It's going to be on All Saints' Day, and Father Jim is going to talk about the canonization process. There's been some changes to that, so I'm sure that'll be really interesting, as always, with Father Jim. And there is a sign-up sheet for food, to bring food to the November 1st gathering. It's on the table by the waters. So if you want to bring food, if you sign up, it really helps Joan to get a heads up kind of on who's bringing what. So thank you. So we really are so fortunate today to have Chance Siri here with us. You might know Chance from church. He's a parishioner here. He's our drummer. And Chance Siri is a security professional, currently working as a manager for the Cybersecurity Task Force at the Nuclear Energy Institute based in Washington, D.C. So we have a real expert here, you guys. Over the past 21 years, Chance has been a proud PG&E employee at the Diablo Canyon Power Plant, serving in such roles as Cybersecurity Program Manager, Cybersecurity Supervisor, and a Senior Digital Systems Engineer. Chance holds a Computer Engineering Bachelor of Science degree from Cal Poly and an MBA from the University of Laverne. Chance is a technical advisor of the Cal Poly Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity Lab and is a guest lecturer at Cal Poly. He holds several cybersecurity industry certifications. He's a parishioner here, as I said, and you've probably seen him here with his beautiful family. He resides here in San Luis Obispo. So again, we are so fortunate to have him here, so let's welcome Chance Siri to our first talk.
All right. Well, thank you, Teresa, for that kind and warm welcome. I really feel very fortunate to be here with you all today. I heard some rumblings from Teresa that you all have been discussing cybersecurity and sharing stories. So that's really exciting for me. Incidentally, October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So it's really apropos to our discussions today. I'm really happy to kick off this Friday Talk series and discussion on cybersecurity. So let's go to our first slide here. And hopefully you'll be able to see what's on there, but if not, just raise your hand and let me know. So before we get started, I'd like to just set the context and the stage a little bit, right? And what I'd like to bring up is what I like to call emotional safety. And what that means is, we're trying to demystify a topic that can be somewhat complicated. And I want everybody here to feel comfortable speaking up, asking questions. I'm here to serve you and to participate in this discussion because I care, right? And so I want you to feel free to ask whatever questions you want. We'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A, and hopefully we'll have a lively discussion. And if there's something that I can't answer, we're going to take some notes and then hopefully get those answers to you. But the main thing is to kind of eliminate the shame that can sometimes come up with this topic, right? Maybe you've been a victim of a cybersecurity incident, right? Maybe you feel like you should know more about cybersecurity than you do now. Or maybe you feel that you want to ask a question, but maybe you feel it's not the smart question, right? So we want to take all those feelings, kind of bundle up in a ball, and just chuck that thing over the fence, because it doesn't matter here, right? In this space, I want you to feel comfortable asking whatever questions you want, or share whatever stories you want, because your story might help somebody else. and we're all here to learn together. Deal? All right. So we got quite a number of topics that we want to cover. I'm going to distill it down to what I think are the 5 kind of salient points that will impact, the folks here. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about myself, and then we'll talk about what cybersecurity is, and then we'll go kind of into passwords and all the different elements that I think are important. So one thing that you will not get out of this is kind of prescription of what to do. Like, I won't tell you, don't do this, because it really depends, right? Cybersecurity is all fundamentally about risk management, right? You are kind of balancing 2 different needs. One is security, cybersecurity, personal security. The other is some sense of convenience, right? Every one of us has one of these things, right? Probably, cell phone. You can do a lot with your cell phone these days. And it's very convenient, but it opens ourselves up to risk, right? Risk of, what happens if somebody steals that thing, right? What happens if somebody compromises a bank account? It's convenient to store passwords in your web browser, but with that convenience comes risk. And you will see that theme throughout our discussion, right? So I don't want to prescribe what to do, because only you can determine what risk you're willing to take and what conveniences you'd like to have. So just keep that in mind as we kind of go through this. I'm going to make sure that I got everything that I wanted to talk about here. Yes. So again, we're going to talk about a lot of things, and if there's one thing that I want you to come away with this discussion with, is just awareness, cyber situational awareness, that what things to look out for, what things are important. You might not understand them in this moment, but that doesn't mean that you can't look more into it, right? Google, just research it. We could talk about it after the discussion today, and kind of unpack and demystify any questions that you might have. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so we'll just blow by this real quick. Go back to that. So yeah, as was mentioned, I graduated from Cal Poly. I studied computer engineering, and I started working for PG&E at Diablo Canyon right after I graduated from Cal Poly. So it's been pretty much my first career and only career after graduating. And then very recently in 2018, I took on the role of a cybersecurity supervisor and program manager. So I did that for a little while, and then just this year I started working for the Nuclear Energy Institute to lead their cybersecurity task force. And Nuclear Energy Institute, they do policy. They're a policy organization based in DC, so they deal a lot with regulations and regulatory issues. All right, next slide. So this is me. That bottom left side was pretty much when I started at Diablo Canyon. I don't remember if that was the real control room or the fake one, but I think it's the fake one. And then the one on the right is me on top of Containment Dome. Diablo Canyon has 2 operating units, and the very top there's a little area where you can walk around, and so that's that. And then the very top one on the left is this year in Savannah, Georgia, where we were talking about cybersecurity. And Frank, you told me, from the first one 20 years ago till now, I feel like I haven't aged a bit. Don't answer that. Don't answer that. Don't answer that. All right, next slide. Okay, so now we're going to get into kind of the meat of it. What is cybersecurity? So in 1848, Jean-Baptiste Carr had a saying. He was a novelist, and he had a saying: the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? I really like that phrase, and I use it a lot in a lot of different contexts. But what that quote allows me to do is to use a metaphor. So what I want to do is propose a metaphor for you on how to describe cybersecurity. So there you see a house, right? And what is a house? House is a structure, right? It's designed to protect the stuff that's inside from the stuff that's outside. Maybe you have something valuable inside. Maybe you have a collection of Rolex watches that you want to protect, right? Or you have your family. Maybe you have a mint collection of G.I. Joe figurines that have not been opened, and you want to protect that collection. So the house is designed to protect, the inside from what? From inclement weather, from dust and debris, from animals kind of going in and rummaging around, and also to protect what's inside from strangers or criminals, right? And so the home is a good metaphor for cybersecurity. Again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So let's consider the home. How do we access the home? What's a primary way we access the house? The front door, right? So the front door is an important security piece of your home, right? And you might want to ask yourself several different questions, okay? What type of door am I going to use for my front door? Am I going to use a hollow core door? Probably not, right? It's not very secure, easily broken into. Am I going to use a solid core door? Yeah, that's a little bit better. How about a steel reinforced door? Even better. But if I install a steel reinforced door, now I might have to change the framing of the door to support that type of front door, right? Am I going to go with a single deadbolt lock? Yeah, okay. How about 3 deadbolt locks? Is that safer? You don't know. But it may be more difficult to get into your house, right? You might want to get into your house because you have to use the restroom, and now you have all these locks that you have to do and get in, and it's not very simple, right? Can anybody tell me how else you might be able to get into a home? Windows, right? So now you have to consider windows and how windows impact entry into your home, right? And the more windows that you have, the more opportunities that you have for a criminal to get into your house as well, right? The most secure home, I would say, is probably just a home with just one door, right? One door. But that's not very aesthetically pleasing, right? And it's, inconvenient. And it might not fit my lifestyle. So already in our discussion with the door, we're already seeing a little bit of the trade-offs, right? That in order for me to kind of live my lifestyle and have some conveniences, I have to make some trade-offs. And, maybe I like big windows that are easy to see, outside, or maybe you like small windows. And so I think, part of this is understanding those trade-offs. But we also might want to ask ourselves other questions when it comes to our home. For example, this doesn't happen as much these days, but if a stranger comes knocking on your door, do you just open it right away? Probably not, right? You want to know who's there, right? What if they ask, hey, I'm Joe from back at, Berkeley High School. We went to school together. Don't you remember me? And you're like, not really. He's like, come on, man. I want to come inside and let's talk, let's chat, let's reminisce. And you're suspicious of that, right? Because you just don't know. And that suspicion is going to be very important in our kind of future discussions here as we go through the slides. These days it's very convenient. I think it's Amazon Prime Day coming up, right? Or something like that, right? Very convenient. I can order so many things, so many packages like Christmas every day, right? What if you received a package in your front door and you don't remember ordering anything? Would you open it up? Would you bring it into your house? What if the package that was left on your front door just had some strange wrapping, right? Not typical wrapping, you know? Actually, let's move on to the next slide, and the one next to that. Yeah, what if it looked like that? You had like a duct tape thing and made a duct tape handle. Would you open that? Would you bring it into your home, your place of safety and security with your family? Would you bring something like that into your home and open it? Probably not, right? So again, let's keep in mind, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So we're gonna ask ourselves several questions as we kind of go through this discussion about the home. If you go to the previous slide, do you know who's in your home at all times? Do you want to know who's in your home at all times? Right? We talked about the stranger. Who would you give your address to? Would you just give your address to anybody that asked for it? No? Rose, what's your address? Right? You know, it has to be a trusted individual that you give this information to. Right? Next slide. Vacation. You know, back in the day, I remember when my parents were getting ready for a vacation, and it was this whole drama, right? Like you would, you know, buy those little timers, and back in the days, there were little timers with the little things that you pulled out, and you know, you put those things in so that people on the outside would think that somebody was home because the lights would turn on at night, and you would tell somebody to go and grab mail for you so it doesn't appear that, you know, nobody's home and the mail doesn't build up, so somebody grabs mail for you. You would tell a trusted friend, a neighbor, maybe, keep an eye on things, right? Like, just keep an eye on things while I'm gone, right? And that's it. You would just tell probably just that person. These days, we post on Instagram, hey, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks, house empty. And we think that nobody knows, right? So again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. You know, when we're going on vacation, it's information that we don't want strangers to know. And there's lots of examples like that, information that you don't want strangers to know. And I put there kind of how we look at technology. So, you know, when I started learning how to drive, there was always just a key, right? You just had a key, turn on the car, easy. These days, there's keyless entry. I don't even need to have the key anymore. I just have the key fob in my pocket, or my wife has it in the purse, or whatever, right? And I just stand by the door, open it, sit in, start it, done, right? And then criminals started getting smarter. They said, well, you know, that thing, the car knows that transmitter is nearby, right? And so that transmitter must be transmitting something, right, so that the car knows. And they've learned how to compromise that by being close. Maybe you come into your house and what do? You just hang your keys right there, right? Because maybe there's a hook right there. So criminals can scan that area, monitor that area for these signals, take those signals, and then open your car without even having the key fob there. They can replicate those communication signals. And what if you're the type of person that likes to have a garage door opener? Convenient, right? You just push a button on the car, open the garage. Well, now a criminal has access to your car. They have access to that button, and they can open your garage, just like that, right? Convenience versus security. That's the trade-off. And then lastly, what happens if your home is broken into, right? What happens when that G.I. Joe set that you were saving for posterity gets stolen and put on eBay for sale, right? So you have to think about, so it's going to be important to think about, what do you do in the event that something happens? Again, we go back to the cell phone. A lot of information stored on this, right? A lot of information, including phone numbers. How many people remember phone numbers? I mean, back in the day, I had to write them down, right? And we had to dial them. These days, you don't even have to do that. You just press the name, calls, and nobody remembers phone numbers anymore. So if you lose this thing, you've lost all your contact information. So the key takeaway is, we want to be prepared, right, for the event that something happens to something that's critical for us. And that goes across the board. What happens if ATMs go down, right? When you can't withdraw cash, but cash is the only form of exchange available. All right, next slide. So this metaphor of the home, I'm going to say that applies to anything digital that you own, right? The questions you would ask yourself, how do I monitor if somebody's in my home? Do I install cameras? Do I install an alarm? How secure is that front door? These questions are applicable to your computer, to your smartphone, to your home network. Maybe you have a smart appliance. Maybe you have a refrigerator that tells you, that gives you a little video feed of what's inside. So you're at the grocery store, you're like, I can't remember if I have enough milk or not. And so I can look on my smartphone. Oh, yeah, I have enough milk, right? Or your online bank accounts, right? That's important. Your retirement accounts, et cetera. Email accounts, right? All those questions that we ask ourselves about our home can be applied to any technology that you have, right? The more things change, the more they stay the same. All right, next slide. So let's talk about that front door. Passwords, right? Passwords are your gateway into whatever it is, right? You have a passcode for your phone, you have a password for your bank accounts, you have a password for Amazon, passwords everywhere. So I have some good news and bad news when it comes to passwords. Bad news is all passwords are crackable, every single one of them. You might think, oh, I'm being sly, I'm going to make this complicated passwords with upper and lowercase characters and special characters. And that is true. It is more difficult to crack a password that has, that is long, that has a bunch of different characters, they're non-dictionary type words, but they are crackable, just like a bank vault is crackable. What do you need? Time, motivation, patience, right? With enough time, I can crack a password, just matter of time, matter of patience, right? Just like a criminal can open, not me, because I'm not a criminal, but a criminal can open your front door no matter how secure you make it. All they need is time, patience, right? So your objective through this whole discussion, your objective is to make it difficult, make it more challenging, bless you, right? Make the criminal say, yeah, not worth it. I'm just going to move on to somebody else who is an easier target, right? Because I can go to this house, steel bars on the windows, surveillance cameras everywhere, and a sign that says, you will be shot on sight, kind of that thing. It's like, yeah, I'm going to pass. Next door, oh, this person leaves their door wide open. Easy, right? So the key takeaway is, all passwords can be cracked, and your goal is to make it as difficult as possible. Again, there's a trade-off, right? The more complicated your password, the harder it is to remember, right? It's harder it is to remember. When you use a password like I love dogs, that's easy. It's easy to remember, but it's also easy for a criminal to break, right? So there's a trade-off that we have to appreciate. Now, the current recommendation, and we won't go too much into the technical details, but the current recommendation is that you utilize multi-factor authentication, or what can sometimes be called two-factor authentication. Sometimes it's called MFA, just the acronym, MFA. Sometimes it's 2FA, right? They're all basically the same thing. And the concept is simple. I have a password that I enter, and then I have something else that validates my identity. Something else that is unrelated to a password. Maybe it's a biometric characteristic, attribute, like a thumbprint or face. Somebody brought up, a facial recognition, right? Face ID, for example, if you're using an Apple product. I'm sure Android has their equivalent. So you're using two different forms of authentication to give you access to whatever, right? Bank account, laptop, computer, smartphone. So when you see MFA, 2FA, multi-factor authentication, anything like that, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Now, it might take some research to figure out how to enable it, and everybody does it somewhat a little bit differently to register or to set it up, but they all work similar. Now, is MFA kind of the end-all be-all of authentication? Will it protect you, like guaranteed? No. MFA itself is also crackable, to a very smart adversary. But it will take significantly more time and effort. And again, we want the criminal to go to something that is an easier target, right? So I do have some tips here. We used to tell people not to write passwords down. And generally, that's still the advice, right? You don't want to write passwords down because you can accidentally leave it on the kitchen counter. The delivery guy comes to deliver your refrigerator, your smart refrigerator that you could tell that there's milk inside from, the store. And they're like, oh, passwords. And you've labeled it Book of Passwords, right? So the general tip is, don't write it down. But, understandably, people have to write it down. So you just, because passwords are getting more complex. And that's why you use tools like multi-factor authentication. But, just a little bit of common sense, right? You just keep that notebook or keep that information sacred and also, safe. So a few tips. And that reminds me, we do have a handout, so don't feel like you have to memorize all this stuff. I do have a handout with just some quick tips that you can go back and kind of reread and do your research. But don't reuse passwords. How many of you guys are like Lord of the Ring fans? You ever heard that? One ring to rule them all, right? When you reuse your passwords, it's risky business because if a criminal gets access to that one password, they can now access everything, right? If you have a password that's the same for your email account, which is the same for your banking accounts, which is the same for your computer, it's going to be very easy to access all these things, right? Just from that one password. So it's going to be important for you not to reuse passwords because what can happen sometimes is passwords get compromised and then they get sold on what's the cyber equivalent of the black market. They call it the dark web, right? And so there's a lot of transactions that happen there. People sell credentials that have been stolen. And so those credentials now can be used on multiple sites. So do not reuse passwords. Default passwords. There was once a story some time ago where a criminal had accessed this young family's webcam and was scaring the child that was in the crib by talking through the webcam, right? And they looked into a little bit further, and it's because they didn't change their default password. So when you buy a camera or you buy some device, smart device from the store, from wherever, it will sometimes come with just a default password. Maybe it's just, that's it, password. Password is the default password. It's important to change these default passwords because they're public information, and they give criminals easy access to those devices. Very similar. Would you go to Home Depot and buy, bless you, buy a lock that is the same as every other lock that's on that shelf? Like if there was a lock that used the same key on all the locks on that shelf, would you buy that type of lock? The answer, no, right? No, you would not buy that type of lock, right? Why would you want the same key for everything? So the other thing is don't share passwords, okay? And then, don't save passwords to website. So I know that saving passwords to websites like banking accounts is convenient, right? Because you don't have to enter it in, it's saved. You just click login and it just does its thing, logs in. But when you do that, if anybody has access to your computer, they now have access to those websites. But if you install multi-factor authentication on those websites or you enable it, then it makes it more difficult, right? So again, we see this trade-off, balance for security versus convenience. Next slide.
How safe is your phone number attached to your bank account?
Yeah. So that's a good question. The question was, how safe is your phone number that's attached to your account? And I think what you're getting at is with multi-factor authentication, they will text you, right, a code. Yes. So again, there's no absolutes in cybersecurity. So your phone number is good, so long as you have other layers of protection, right? Like nobody's taken your phone, right? That's one layer of protection, just the physical security of it. Nobody has access to your PIN code to access your phone, right? Because maybe you have your PIN code and then you also have Face ID if you're using an Apple product. So it makes it more challenging, right? So safety, I don't like to talk about security, like how safe is a phone number in terms of absolute, because it depends on a lot of different factors. Now, it is safer than, multi-factor authentication is safer than not having it, right? But kind of going back to the example, multi-factor authentication, sometimes they can send you your code via text or via email. And I make that selection in the beginning. Hey, do I want to receive this code via text or email? So a criminal who has access to your email account can just click email. They'll get the code in, right? So it's relative to kind of layers of protection. But again, multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication, good, right? That's a good thing. So if you see that, look into it more. Next slide. Social engineering. So Kayla gave me the signal that we're kind of halfway through, and I don't know what we are on slide. Oh, we're doing good. Okay, we are on slide 10. Social engineering. So we're going to move on to social engineering. Can anybody maybe explain to me, in their own words, what they think social engineering is? It's fine if there's no answer. So, social engineering isn't actually a new thing. When you go to Costco and they lay out those samples for you to eat, and you see a long line, you're like, wow, there's a long line. Must be good. Must be something good. That's social engineering, right? Social engineering is all about leveraging human behavior, human fears, curiosity, trust, to manipulate you or to take advantage of you, right? And so it's going to be really important to ask yourselves a series of questions when it comes to social engineering. And we'll go into some specific examples that I think are important. But, social engineering is all about understanding human nature, and it is on the rise. It is on the rise. Victims of social engineering are on the rise. And because it's an easy thing for criminals to take advantage of. Because they know you, right? They know you maybe even better than you know yourself, right? They might send you an email that says, hey, we even talked about it, Father Matt has even brought it up a few times, but they might send you an email, hey, you owe some money to the IRS. It's tax time, end of the year, you owe some money. If you don't open this attachment or you don't click this link, the feds are going to come down hard on you. but we're here to help you. You just have to open this link or click on this link and open this attachment, right? So they work on your sense of fear, right? And they try to manipulate you. So tips, read things carefully. And I'm looking at it in the context of emails, but it also happens with text messages these days. Kayla and I, we were talking about how there's an increase in text messaging spam, right, to click on things. So read things carefully. Do not blindly click on links or attachments. And we'll go over why, but do you have a question?
I was just going to say, if anyone's doing Facebook kind of stuff, there's a lot of phishing scams
Yes.
on Facebook that'll get
Yes.
information from you,
Yeah.
like, oh, what's the first car you ever drove? Like a little fun survey, and they're looking for password
Yep.
things, and I see so many people sharing those and
Yeah.
answering them, and I'm thinking, don't do it, but
Yeah. And that's a very good point. Social media, our culture of social media and sharing. We previously talked about the vacation, right? If we're telling somebody, like a stranger, we're talking to a stranger, we don't want to divulge that we're going on vacation, right? But for some reason, the way the human brain works, we think that if we share it on social media, it's safe because because we're not actually talking to a person. But indeed, it's not safe. And we'll get into a little bit more of that, but that's a very, very good point. So read emails, text carefully, and don't just blindly click on links. And just be aware that criminals are coming at you from a behavioral standpoint. They're coming at your fears, your sense of curiosity. Maybe they've told you you've won money. Not that they're taking money, but you've won money, right? Who doesn't want free money? Does it sound too good to be true, right? That's the intuition that you have. And adopting a mentality of what we call in the industry, zero trust is important. Zero trust, right? I don't trust anything. Suspicious of everything.
What about when you get these text messages where you don't want it coming in and you say, click on it and subscribe? Is that me?
It can be. So your question is a very good question, and sometimes you can get an email with a link that says unsubscribe, right? Or the browser itself, or like let's say Gmail, you use Gmail. Gmail will have its own internal link or button to click that says this is junk mail. I don't have an Android phone, but in Apple products, they'll have a little link that says, is this junk? Is this a junk text? And that's more reliable. Usually I just delete it. Like the ocean waves, sometimes these things just ebb and flow. And again, and we'll get to your question, as far as social engineering, don't feel embarrassed or ashamed if you've been a victim of social engineering in the past. Even cybersecurity professionals are victims of phishing, which is a type of social engineering attack.
I was thinking, if
Oh.
you have a couple of emails on your computer that are no longer being used, can you get rid of them and just get down to one, or what? And does it actually go away, or?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good question that is applicable to a lot of things, right? In this context is if you have multiple email accounts, is it good to just kind of pare it down to maybe one email account? And generally, I would say yes, right? You don't want to have anything out there that you don't need. But that also goes with applications, right? It's very easy to download and install an application on your phone. Do you use every single one of them? I'm going to say no. You don't use every single one of them. You might use a handful of them on a regular basis. But when it comes to email accounts, when it comes to multiple applications on your phone, on your computer, I want you to think about the house. Because each one of those is a window. Each one of those is a window to your home. The more windows you have, the more access. And we'll go in the back and then we'll go to you.
So when you press junk, does that mean that it's gone, that
Not necessarily. So I like to use the analogy of like spam calls, right? These days, spam calls are coming in from randomized numbers. If one number doesn't work, they'll just use another number. And so what ends up happening is whatever company, like the phone company, they have to build a database of all these numbers. But all these permutations of numbers, there's too many there's really like, what's that game where you have the mole and you got to whack-a-mole, right? Whack-a-mole. It's always a game of whack-a-mole. So that's why I say, a lot of times you just delete it. Just delete it, just don't answer it. There are apps that filter that sort of thing, but those have its own issues as well. So the general advice is, if you read an email and it's getting you to click something, you're suspicious, you have zero trust, delete it. And then move on.
I recently, or I still have problems with my HP printer. So I went to Google to get an HP customer service. You know what?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I did all this stuff, and then I called a family member who's in IT, and they went,
Yeah.
I called a fake number, and they had me doing all kinds of stuff, so I
Yeah.
wondered if that's
Yeah. So that's a good point as well, in that you really have to make sure that you have a trusted source. Now, going to the company's website, like Googling it and going to HP, or going to, let's say you bought an Apple product, right, and you want to go to Apple customer support. Go to that place directly. Don't go to it via a link, right? Because maybe you might get an email that says, yeah, we want you, but if you have any questions, just contact customer support, click this link. Well, that link will take you to a fake page that may have a fake number. And I'll show you an example. So we'll get into that because that's a very, very, very good point. All right, next slide. So here we go. Can you spot the difference? Now, I told Kayla, I don't remember. Like the first one. If you got an email from a friend and you got that email from a friend all the time, like they're sending you an email every week, man, I hope you're doing good, have a blessed week, and you get this email, but one day it's a little different. Can you spot the difference on the top one? Yeah. There's a period after the N on one, and then on the left side there's a period before the N. Now, could you spot that if you were in a rush? You were trying to get out the door, and you're trying to make your appointment, and you just see this email, you're like, oh yeah, hey, I want you to, check out this website, it's cool, click this link, bam. The email has come from a different place, and in the fury of getting out the door, you missed it. Can anybody tell me which is the correct Nativity website? Is it .org or .com? Yeah. I don't remember. I honestly didn't remember.
I read one time that the A can be different in Europe or something.
Yeah.
You can click on that wrong A.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Like certain characters can be swapped or mismatched. Can anybody tell me what's Father Matt's correct email address? .org, right? But see, we're in this social experiment here where you have the time to look at it. I am pointing it out to you that there's something wrong with it, but it's going to be important for you to take that sense of zero trust back home when you're in a rush, when you're trying to get out the door, to be deliberate and careful in what you read, who it's coming from, and all the characteristics of the email. Because again, we're going back to that package, right? Would you let a package into your home, you don't know who the sender is? You think, oh, maybe I did order something from Amazon, but maybe not. Is the packaging weird, right? Misspellings, periods in different places. It's important to be aware of that. Next slide. So, I'm a cybersecurity professional, and I also get text messages that get me to click on links, right? This is an example of one. Customer ID, sounds official. I have an ID number, right? Our customer service department will contact you if you do not want a refund. Well, who doesn't want a refund? But you can tell, like, you know, there's a carriage return in a weird place. Why have a carriage return after and then refund, right? The grammar's a little bit off. If you have any questions regarding your payment authorization or need to change your order, wait, I didn't order anything. You know, I don't want to buy something that I didn't order, pay for something I didn't order. Please contact us immediately. Check out this bill. It's in a PDF file. Click on it. That's phishing attack, right? Getting me to click something, and this was an email that I got, right? Is there a sense of urgency, weird grammar, that sort of thing? Do you want me to open a file? You know, do you know who the sender is? Again, going back to the email address. Do I know who the sender is? I have no idea who that is, right? Next slide. So kind of going on this theme of urgency, right? It's a social engineering tactic. It is really a sales tactic. How many of us have come across, hey, you know, this is the last one. This is the last one that we have of this. Normally, it's $1,000, but for you, Teresa, you know, because we know each other, $100, right? It's a social engineering tactic, you know. Criminals will try to scare you. Your password has changed. Oh no, this is the IRS. Respond immediately. Your account has been hacked, right? And sometimes it will appear to come from an official organization, like the email itself. Like, they're very sophisticated. They look like they've come from Netflix, right? They'll have the Netflix logo, and they'll be like, wow, that looks like it, and it says my password changed. Well, I didn't change my password. Click here to reset your password. So whenever, again, zero trust. Am I suspicious? When in doubt, just go to the website directly. Just go to Netflix directly, right? And don't click on any links that will take you to the website. Next slide. Digital footprint. Okay, so we're going to change topics here. And somebody brought this up earlier, you know, as far as Facebook and, you know, other social media apps. It's important to know your footprint, right? Where you leave little cookie crumbs that criminals can get information from you. If you post on social media that you're going on vacation in the Bahamas for 2 weeks, they know that, well, you know, I wonder if this person lives by themselves. They're going to be on, maybe their house is empty, right? Do you have credentials that are there for easy access to websites? We talked about that, right? Saving credentials. Again, balancing convenience versus security. Your browsing history, your cookies. And so we'll go into, every time you browse a website, you leave what we call digital footprint, and they're called cookies. So it's just data to help make things more convenient for you, right? For example, your username, you know, it's saved to allow you to log back in conveniently. Maybe you're on Amazon, you're like, you know, I don't know if I want to buy that stuff now. I'm just going to put it in my cart and just save it. You know, that information is saved in a cookie. And, you know, just for awareness, when you click on those PDF files, those emails, those phishing emails, sometimes those are attempts to gather that information for a criminal or adversary, right? You click on the PDF runs some programming, grabs all your cookies, and sends it off to, you know, criminal, all without you even knowing what's going on, right? And so it's important to understand your social media presence, like what information you're putting on social media, everything's interconnected. How many people have gone to a hotel and like the hotel has Netflix and you're like, oh sweet, you know, I wanna watch the Netflix show, and so I'm gonna log on to Netflix at the hotel and it's gonna bring up everything that I have in my you know, saved list. You know, I've done that, right? But how many people remember to log out once they're done? Once they leave the hotel room? You know, do you remember to log out of that Netflix account? Now that Netflix account is available to whoever stays there the next time, right after you. Oh, sweet, you know, so-and-so's been watching, you know, Narcos or something, right? So it's important, you know, we all have busy lives. Convenience is king in our busy lives, but again, that comes with a trade-off, right? Next slide. So, yeah.
When a website says we use cookies, I usually just X it out.
Yeah. And
It still works.
yes, so websites will work without cookies, right? So the whole purpose of cookies is to save what's called session data. So if you browse that website, let's say you're buying, you know, stuff for your grandkids and, you know, you put it in a cart but you're not ready to pay for it yet, all that information is saved in what's called cookies. And they're just basically files with data in them. And if you disable it, the website will work, but you've lost the convenience. Now, when you go back to the website, you have to find those things all over again, right? And add them to your cart all over again. You have to log into your account all over again. So it's inconvenient.
If you save something to the website, like says you want to save whatever it is to the website, can you go back in and not save it?
Yeah, so in modern web browsers, you can go in, there's typically a setting that says clear all browsing data. And so when you do that, when you clear all browsing data, and that's why it's hard to be prescriptive because, you know, different browsers have different settings, they're in different locations. But generally speaking, modern browsers have the ability to clear all your saved data and clear it like after, you know, have it done automatically, right? After you close the browser, it'll automatically clear all the data. Again, you're balancing kind of the convenience of it versus the security. I saw a hand go, yeah.
Going back, you know, to this giving information over the internet, and today with the political environment, and they got people running for office and donate here and so forth, and they ask for all that information. Now, and I'm very leery about it. I
Yeah.
don't do it, but
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that do. They
Yes.
just donate $500 to whoever, and I would think that would be pretty easy to.
Yes. And so, you know, I know not to get into politics, so I won't, but, you know, as we head into this election, you know, it's going to be important to just be aware that criminals know this as well. And so they will try to attempt to leverage, again, social engineering, human behavior, to try to get you to do something and take advantage of you. The key really is to be aware of that can happen. And then the other piece of it is, whenever in doubt, like don't click a link on something you've received. Go out and go to these websites directly, these official websites. You know, a lot of the political donation websites, they have something that's set up that's official. So do a little bit of homework and go to those websites directly is kind of the general good practice. But that's a good question. So going back to digital footprint, so I like to ride motorcycles. And over the summer, I went on a motorcycle trip with my friend. And this kind of goes along, well, you know, a lot of times we post pictures. We post pictures to like Instagram or Facebook, or we share photos. And these days with, you know, your cell phone, taking photos is a breeze, right? Just click, done, right? Hundreds of photos, easy. But each photo contains information that can be useful to a criminal, even when you post it online. There's information that's called metadata, and the name of it isn't that important. What's important is the information that this metadata holds, right? So I took this picture, and it's hard to see, so I'll just describe it to you, but it tells your exact location. There's geolocation information in that picture. It also tells a potential criminal what device I used, right? It says, hey, you know, you have an iPhone, you know, iPhone 15 Plus Max, right? And so if I were a criminal and I had this information, I could design a phishing email that says, hey, you know, I'm going to send Chance an email that says, hey, you have an opportunity to upgrade your iPhone 15 Pro Max to an iPhone 16 Pro Max. We just need some information from you. It looks official. Click on this link. How do they know that information? How do they know what kind of phone I have? Right? So they may have information about you that makes you feel like you can trust them, right? But they've gotten that information. Maybe I posted this picture on Instagram. Hey, went on my, motorcycle ride with my buddy. I'm not going to be home for 3 hours, man. Right? And so, there's geolocation information on there, which says to a criminal, oh, wow, this person's in Nipomo. I know it takes, 45 minutes from Nipomo to get back to San Luis Obispo, not including lunch, gas, and, all that stuff. So, I've got about an hour that I can find out where, if I already know where he lives. So, it's important for you to understand that this exists out there. And this is a benign thing, right? Motorcycle ride, fine. What if it was a picture of your grandchildren? A picture of, your grandchildren at school, right? There's geolocation information now where I know where they go to school. And I'm going to craft an email that says, hey, this is an important message about your grandchildren. They go to this school. Click on this PDF file to find out the details of this important communication. They know so much information. They know your grandchildren, where they go to school, right? And it's all from one photo that you posted on Facebook that has metadata in there, right? Next slide. Smartphone culture. So again, our lives are in here, in this smartphone. There's so much information that it is a treasure trove. There's the old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? We've all heard that. And it makes so much sense, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. You drop that basket, and all your eggs are broken. Yet we put all our eggs in that one basket that we call our smartphone. Saved credentials, easy access to bank accounts, pictures, phone numbers, right? The more things change, the more they stay the same. So there are some tips that I think is going to be important for us. With your cell phone, I'm reminded of a story. So there was a guy at the airport who was boarding planes without having a ticket. He didn't have a ticket. So what this person did was he would look around at people who were looking at their boarding pass, right? Because now your boarding pass can be on your phone. You don't need a paper boarding pass anymore. So convenience, right? How convenient is that? Your boarding pass on your phone. I don't need paper, lose the paper. And so people were looking up their boarding pass, and the person was standing behind them snapping a picture. Because the boarding pass has what? It has a QR code. That's how convenience, right? Very convenient. So this guy would snap a picture. Now they have your QR code, and now they've boarded the plane. Right? So be aware of your surroundings. Physical security is important. When you're entering your passcode, is there a mirror behind you? Is there a window? A lot of times you see people and they're just walking down the street and they're just crossing streets and just focused on this thing, right? Not knowing the light's not green, right? Yeah, the bus is coming, light's not green. So your own personal safety is being impacted by this device, right? So our smartphone culture, we have to be careful from a physical standpoint, just physical security and safety, but also from the safety in the sense that there's a lot of information on here. Right, next slide. Smart whatever culture. We talked about the refrigerator where you can know what temperature your refrigerator is running at from Vaughn's, and you could tell, hey, I can't remember, do I have milk, do I have cheese? Oh, let me just look. Oh, yeah, it's convenient. Right? Our smart culture is convenient. Smartphones, smart dishwashers, smart refrigerators. Again, these are windows to your home. They are points of access for a criminal. If you didn't change your password, your default password on your refrigerator, it's still password from when you bought it, right? Somebody could log into that very easily. So it's important for you to understand that these conveniences come at a risk. I would rather you hold on to your 401k or retirement fund than know what temperature your refrigerator is running at the store. So to me, that is not a risk worth taking. So I'm balancing risk with convenience, right? Next slide. All right, you've been hacked. All right, you know, it was bound to happen sooner or later, right? So what do you do? And, you know, here is important, I think, to be prepared, you know. And we talked about this earlier, right? There's a lot of information on our digital devices, on our bank accounts. If you got your phone stolen, would you be able to call the people that are important to you, right? Do you have their phone numbers, you know, handy? Could you log back into your bank accounts if you had the credentials taken? Let's say somebody took your computer, somebody took your phone. Would you be able to log back into your account? Do you know the number to the bank? Do you know your account number? You know, all these important pieces of information, right? So it's going to be important to have that mental model that, hey, something's going to happen. I need to be prepared, right? I need to save, maybe take a backup of your photos, these important photos of memories that you have. You know, take a backup of them. You know, store them in a safe place. We used to have, I don't know how common it is, but safety deposit boxes at banks, right? I remember fond memories of my parents going with them to check out safety deposit boxes, and it was cool. You know, you go back in the back vault, and, you know, I don't know how common they are, but, you know, that's a form of security, of defense in depth, right? You store that G.I. Joe collection that's unopened in the packages someplace other than your home, because who knows, you know, your fire may take your home out, right? And you have all that stuff, all those memories. So having kind of redundant forms of backup and storing this information in multiple places is something to think about, right? I'm not telling you to do it because it's inconvenient, right? But it's something to think about, risk versus convenience. And then always, if you feel like you've been a victim of a cybersecurity incident, you know, make sure you contact local law enforcement, you know, so they're tracking this. And, you know, understand that it may be important to understand how this happened, right? Like, was it because I used the same password everywhere? Because getting recompromised in a cyber incident can happen, right? You can become a victim over and over and over again. So you have to understand a little bit about maybe how it happened to begin with, right? Was it through a password that maybe you had the same? Was it through your smart device? And you might not always get that information, right? These types of forensic information might not always be available. In which case, you know, you probably just want to like reset everything, right? Reset up, just start from ground zero. What does that look like? Like if you had to reset everything right now from ground zero, what does that look like for you? Right? You have to buy a new phone, reinstall everything, reinstall password. I'll get to you. What does that look like? Right? And the overachiever might like draw out a plan. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. But if you're not, you know, you're not that dedicated, which is fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. You know, at least think about it. Think about what would happen if I lost my phone today. We got 5 minutes.
So how big a problem is it that all these smart devices in your phone, as they age, the companies stop updating it appropriately to protect you from people coming in? How big a problem?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because you might buy a product from Amazon that's not supported, right? There's no updates, so there may be a vulnerability in the software that's used to access these smart devices. And so, you know, again, we go back to the metaphor. I want a steel reinforced door with, you know, 3 deadbolt locks, multiple keys. You know, I want this cool thing that I saw on TV, you know, recognizes your eyeballs and, you know, lets you in. But it's inconvenient, right? You know, smart devices are convenient, but they come at a risk. And you have to make that decision just like crossing a street, jaywalking. Am I going to cross the street in the middle of a busy New York intersection, police officer standing right next to me? Probably not, right? But if I'm in the middle of, Kansas and there's nobody around, maybe, right? So you gauge your own personal risk, and what conveniences you would like to have. All right, I think, are we over? But I'm here to stay, so I'm actually here, we can answer questions, keep on answering questions, but I think that's the end.
Going back to the spam calls,
Uh-huh.
and I don't recognize the numbers, and then there's times where you, if they don't leave a voicemail, definitely a spam call.
Yeah,
But when they leave a voicemail and you click it, all you hear is a static.
yeah.
Is that something that's?
There's various techniques, that criminals might employ to, sometimes it's, hey, does this number even work? Right? So a lot of times if I don't recognize the phone number, I just don't answer it because,
I think we'll close we're going to close the formal part of the talk now because I try to keep it to a certain time. You are welcome to stay. Chance is very generous and has offered to be here to answer your questions. I think your questions have been really good.
Yeah.
And I just appreciate all of the questions and appreciate Chance being here with us and sharing his expertise. We could probably talk to him all day, but you are welcome to stay here and he'll be here to answer your questions. So thank you.
I'm here. Thank you.